All quadratic equations can be solved using square roots by using the process called completing the square. Okay? To complete a square, what you're going to do is you're going to take your b value, remember that's your middle term of your trinomial, you're going to divide it by 2, and you are going to square it. Okay, that came from right here. Take your b value, divide it by 2, and square it. And that's going to become your c value. And that is how we complete a square. So for example, e will take 12, and we'll divide it by 2, and we will square it. 12 divided by 2 is 6, squared is 36. Okay, example F. B is -6 divided by 2 squared. -6 divided by 2 is -3. -3 squared is +9. Okay, that number on the end is always going to be positive. Okay, so now that you know how to complete the square, we can solve a quadratic equation using this process of completing the square and solving using square roots. Okay, so we're going to put it all together here in these next examples. So we have 2x squared plus 2x minus 15 is equal to 0. We're going to go through each step along with this example. All right, so step 1 of completing the square is to isolate the constant c. So that would be 15 here. So I need to add 15 to each side of my equation. Okay, this is step 1. So I have x squared plus 2x equals 15. Okay, my second step is to complete my square. So we take b divided by 2 squared, and I need to add that number to both sides of my equation. So in this case, b is 2. So I'm taking 2 divided by 2, and I'm squaring it. 2 divided by 2 is 1, squared is 1. So we are going to take b divided by 2 squared, which we said was 1, and add it to both sides of our equation. Okay? Our next step, step 3, we are going to factor the left side of the equation. The way this is going to work every time is we are going to create a binomial square. All right, your variable is going to be the first term. Your middle sign, it's either plus or minus, is going to be based off of your b value. My b value is positive, so this sign in the middle is going to be positive. Our second term inside this binomial square is going to be the value of b divided by 2. In this case, 2 divided by 2 was 1, and that was equal to 15 plus 1, which is 16. Okay, our fourth step here is to solve using our square root method, which is what we just did in part 1. So we will square root each side of our equation, meaning we have 2 equations. X plus 1 equals 4, and x plus 1 equals -4. Subtract 1 from each side, x equals 3. Again, subtract 1 from each side, x equals -5 are my 2 solutions. All right, let's just go through a couple more examples to make sure that we've got the hang of this. Example H, x squared minus 8x plus 15 is equal to 0. So, step 1 of completing the square is to isolate our constant. So we're going to subtract the 15 from each side. So we get x squared minus 8x is equal to -15. Step 2, we need to calculate b divided by 2 squared. b is -8, divided by 2 is -4, squared is 16. So we are going to take 16 and add it to both sides of our equation. Step 3, we're creating our binomial square on the left side. We start with the x variable. Our sign comes from our b value. And the second term is b, which is -8, divided by 2, which would be -4. -15 plus 16 gives me 1. Okay, from here, step 4, here this was step 4. Step 4 is to solve using square roots. So we'll square root each side, and we have two equations. X minus 4 is 1, and x minus 4 is negative 1. Add 4 to each side to solve those equations. You get x is 5. Add 4, x is 3. Okay, you'll notice on this next example that our first step is already done for us. The 25, negative 25, is already on the right side of our equation. So let's go ahead and complete step 2. And we need to take b, which is negative 10, divide it by 2, which is negative 5, and square it, which is 25. Add that to both sides of our equation. Okay, step 3, factor. Create our binomial square. First term is x. Middle sign comes from b. Second term comes from b divided by 2, which is 10 divided by 2, which is 5. Negative 25 plus 25 is 0. Step 4, square roots. Now, when I square root 0, we said consider both the positive and negative solutions. However, 0 does not have a positive and negative value. So, if when solving using square roots you have 0 being square rooted, you only have one equation that can be written, which means this quadratic equation has only one solution. That would be x equals 5. All right, last little piece to completing this square. Those all worked out fairly nicely. You would have noticed that the first term was always your variable squared, your x squared, okay? Now, we know that it's not always just x squared. At times, our quadratic equation is going to have a number that is in front of the x squared. We have a different lead coefficient. Here's the deal with completing the square. It's always going to work. You can always do it. However, when a doesn't equal 1, there's one more step we need to do, okay? Because to use completing the square, a has to equal 1. If a doesn't equal 1, you need to divide the entire equation by the value of your lead coefficient, which is a. So on example J here, we can see that our lead coefficient is 3. So we're going to divide everything by 3. I want you to notice that your equation is equal to 0, so I could divide that by 3 too, but it's just going to be 0. All right, so my equation is x squared plus 4x plus 22 is equal to 0. Step 1, isolate the constant. So we'll subtract the 22 from each side. X squared plus 4x equals negative 22. Find b, which is 4, divided by 2, which is 2, squared, which is 4. So step 2, we're going to take x squared plus 4x, and we're going to add b divided by 2 to both sides. So we're adding 4 to both sides. Step 3, create your binomial square. First term is x, sign comes from b, second term is b divided by 2, so that would be 2 is equal to negative 22 plus 4, negative 18. Now, Mrs. Crockett has a song that can help you remember the steps of completing the square.
To complete the square, this is what you should do. Make sure the a is 1 and move the c to add half a b squared to both sides. Factor out the left so the middle term hides.